I used to work the night shift at a small hotel, and this happened about a year ago. Even now, it still sits in the back of my mind because it scared me far worse than anything else that's happened on that job. I still don't know what that man wanted or what he was trying to pull, and the fact that he stayed around for so long without me realizing he didn't belong there makes my stomach twist. The place itself was tiny, 3 floors and around 40 rooms in total. Most nights we barely hit 10 or 15 occupied rooms. My shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., usually slow and dull, which honestly suited me fine. I sat behind the front desk, filled out paperwork, checked cameras from time to time, or watched YouTube on my phone if the night was completely dead. The lobby wasn't much, a desk, a couple couches facing a TV, and some vending machines in the corner. Behind the desk was a small office with a computer and a glass window so I could see the lobby while sitting inside. After a certain hour, the front doors locked automatically. Anyone arriving had to buzz in, and I'd hit a button to let them through. Normally, nothing at all happened after midnight except the occasional late traveler. But one night, a man buzzed the door around 11 p.m., and thinking about that moment still makes my insides drop. I let him in. He looked mid-40s, tall, on the thinner side, wearing jeans, a baseball cap, and carrying a backpack. He walked up to the counter and asked for a room. I told him the price, he nodded, and handed over a card. I swiped it, it approved, and I gave him a key for room 214 on the second floor. He stared at me a few seconds too long before leaving. His expression was blank, and his eyes stayed locked on me for 3 or 4 seconds before he finally turned toward the elevator. Nothing about it screamed danger, but something about him made me remember the moment. After he went upstairs, I settled back into my chair and scrolled on my phone for a while. Around midnight, I looked up and saw him again. He wasn't at the desk. He just walked straight past me and sat down in the lounge area facing the TV, which wasn't even turned on. I figured maybe he couldn't sleep. Guests sometimes hung out in the lobby late at night, so at first I didn't think much of it. But after about 30 minutes, I realized he hadn't moved at all. He wasn't on his phone, wasn't reading, wasn't dozing off. He just sat there, staring directly at the blank screen. At one point, I got up to grab a bottle of water from the vending machine. When I crossed the lobby, I felt him turn his head and watch me the entire way. I didn't look at him directly, but I could feel his eyes following me until I was back behind the desk. The feeling in my chest tightened, something instinctive telling me something was off. Around 1 a.m., I opened the reservation system to kill time, and that's when I noticed something strange. Room 214 was listed as vacant. I frowned and checked again, thinking maybe I clicked the wrong thing, but it still showed empty. I checked the logs for check-ins that night and there was no record of his name. No payment. No card authorization. Nothing. Confused, I checked the transaction report to make sure the swiped card from earlier had gone through, but the system showed no charge at all. I remember sitting there, trying to wrap my head around how that was possible when I had literally watched the screen approve the card. Then I called room 214. The phone rang and rang with no answer. After that, I checked the key card entry log for that room, which recorded every time the door opened. It showed nothing. No entry that night. That's when it hit me that he never went to the room at all. He had stayed downstairs the entire time. I looked toward the lounge. He was still there, unmoving, staring at the dark TV screen like it held something only he could see. A wave of dread sank into my stomach that I sat there for another 15 minutes, watching him from behind the desk while trying to convince myself the system must have glitched. But the empty room log, the missing payment, the fact that the door had never been opened even once, it all pointed to the same thing. He was not checked in. He wasn't a guest at all. Around 1:30, I finally walked over and asked if everything was all right. He slowly turned his head toward me with that same blank look and said he just couldn't sleep. Then he turned back toward the TV as if that explained everything. I nodded and went back to the desk, but my hands were shaking. Around 2 a.m., I realized he wasn't in the lounge anymore. My heart dropped. I scanned the lobby, the hallway, the reflections in the windows, and then finally I spotted him. He was standing at the far end of the hallway near the bathrooms, half hidden in the shadows. Motionless. Just standing there. I glanced at him in quick intervals, trying not to look obvious, but every time I looked, he was still facing my direction. After several minutes, he walked back to the lounge and sat down again like nothing had happened. That was when I called my manager. She sounded half asleep and basically told me to keep an eye on him, and call the police if he did anything threatening. I remember thinking it already felt threatening, but I didn't have any clear reason to make a big move. So I hung up and went straight to the security cameras. On the hallway camera, I watched him walk all the way down to the end, stop, stand completely still for several minutes, and then come back. Later, I saw him enter the stairwell and stay there for 10 minutes doing who knows what. Every time I looked away from the monitor to the actual lobby, he was in a different spot. By the vending machines. Near the elevators. Once, standing barely inside the corner where the lighting didn't fully reach. Always staring. Always watching. By 3:30, my nerves were completely shot. I couldn't sit still anymore, so I called the non-emergency police line and explained that I had a man inside the hotel who I didn't believe was an actual guest. They said they'd send someone. While I waited, I noticed he had moved again. This time he was closer, standing maybe 15 feet away from the desk just watching me. His eyes didn't blink much, and he didn't speak. He just stared like he was studying me. I pretended to stay focused on the computer, but my breathing was shaky and uneven. Around 3:50, the buzzer went off. I thought it might have been the officers, but it was just a late guest coming in. I pressed the button to let him through quickly, and the man's head turned immediately. He followed the guest with his eyes the entire way across the lobby as if he were analyzing every step he took. That somehow scared me even more. A few minutes later, the man slipped out of sight again. I checked the cameras and saw him standing in front of a random guest's door on the first floor, not knocking, not moving, just standing there. That was the moment I stopped trying to rationalize anything. I called 911 and told them he was outside a guest's room and I didn't know what he was planning. I kept my eyes glued to the camera as the dispatcher stayed on the line. He stood at that door for around 3 minutes, then slowly walked back toward the lobby. When he re-entered, he came right up to the front desk this time and leaned over the counter. His voice was low and unsettling when he asked if there was any food available. I told him the vending machines were in the corner. He gave a tiny smile, turned away, and walked back to the lounge. Every second after that felt like an hour while I waited for the police. Finally, around 4:10 a.m., 2 officers arrived. I let them in immediately and pointed straight toward the lounge where he was sitting again, as if nothing unusual had happened all night. They walked over to him and started talking quietly. I couldn't hear what they were asking, but I saw them request his ID. He answered them calmly, barely moving, like he didn't think any of this was strange. After a couple minutes, they guided him toward the doors and walked him outside. One officer came back in and explained what they found. The man wasn't a registered guest at all. The credit card he gave me earlier was stolen, and he had no reservation, no bags, nothing that indicated he ever intended to stay. He had only pretended to check in so he could get inside the locked building. They charged him with trespassing and with the stolen card. Then they left. And the moment the door closed behind them, all the fear I'd been pushing down for hours hit me at once. My hands were shaking so badly I had to sit down. Every time I checked the cameras after that, I half expected to see him in another dark corner of the hotel. I kept replaying everything, how he sat there staring at a blank television, how he watched me, how he appeared in random parts of the lobby as if he were mapping the place out, how he stood outside a guest's room for minutes at a time. The thought that he had been wandering around inside for hours, all while never actually being a guest, made my skin crawl. My shift finally ended, and when the morning staff came in, I told them everything. But even after I clocked out and walked to my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that he could still be somewhere watching from the lot or behind a window. I don't know what he was planning, but I know with absolute certainty it wasn't anything good. That night stayed with me. It still does. That night became something I carried with me long after I stopped working there. For weeks, every small noise made me jump. When I checked the lobby cameras during later shifts, I always hesitated for a second before switching to the view behind the desk, terrified I'd see someone crouched under it or standing just out of frame. What rattled me most wasn't just that he stayed in the building for hours. It was how intentionally he moved, how quietly he shifted from one part of the lobby to another, how he watched everything without saying anything. It felt like he was waiting for a moment when no one else would walk through the doors. Or maybe he was searching for an opportunity and never found the one he wanted. Even now, I sometimes wonder how long he planned to stay unseen. He didn't try to hide when I saw him. He didn't bother pretending to sleep or look casual. He wandered halls, lingered near guest rooms, stood in dark corners like he belonged there. He carried himself like someone who thought he had all night to decide what he wanted to do. When the police walked him out, he didn't argue or fight. He just left, calm and blank, as if being caught didn't really matter. After that shift, I never worked another overnight alone without thinking of him. Sometimes, when the front doors buzzed late at night, I'd get a wave of panic before seeing a normal guest walk through. And every time someone asked for a room with an empty expression, or stared a moment too long, I'd feel the same cold feeling crawl up my spine. People come and go in a hotel. That's the nature of the job. But that night taught me how easy it is for the wrong person to blend in, to slip past normal routines by acting like they belong. What still stays with me isn't just fear. It's the realization that I'll never know what he was planning during those hours he paced the lobby, moved through the hallways, and watched me work like he was measuring something in his head. Whatever he intended, I'm just grateful the police arrived before he had the chance to try it. My name is Meredith. I'm 24, and I work the night shift at a tiny gas station off County Road 11. It's the sort of place people only notice when they're lost or nearly out of gas. I took the job because it was predictable and quiet, which used to feel comforting. That changed. It began on a Thursday around 1 a.m. The air outside was heavy and still, and the hum from the overhead lights had been irritating me all night. I was just about to microwave a cinnamon roll I didn't even really want when the door chimed. A man walked in, mid-40s, maybe older. His green coat looked worn, his hair was messy, and his lips looked dry, like he hadn't smiled in a long time. He didn't head straight for the drinks or snacks. Instead, he stopped near the counter and stared at me with a strange familiarity. I forced a polite, "Hi." He asked, "You always work this late?" I blinked and said, Yeah, mostly." He smiled slightly, then added, "I figured. I've passed through a few times. Noticed it's always you." The way he said it unsettled me more than I let show. I responded with something like, "Small town, I guess." But he still didn't move. Then he said my name. "Meredith, right?" I froze. I wasn't wearing a name tag. I opened my mouth to ask how he knew, but then he motioned to the whiteboard where I had written, "Cinnamon coffee is back." He said most people make little circles when they dot an I, but I used tiny slashes. He said it was specific. Thoughtful. I didn't reply. He didn't buy anything, didn't look around the store, just stood there studying me like he was trying to read something on my face. After a minute, he nodded a little. "I'm Paul," he said. "Just curious, that's all." Then he walked back into the fog outside. After that, he started showing up randomly. Not every night and not often enough to accuse him outright, but just enough that I stopped pretending it was a coincidence. Sometimes he came inside. Sometimes he sat in his car at the edge of the lot with his headlights off. And every time, I felt that same uneasy twist in my stomach, there was one night when he walked in while I was trying to ignore the fact that he'd been sitting in the lot for nearly 30 minutes. He came straight to the counter, bought a bottle of water, and lingered like always. "You're quieter tonight," he said. I muttered something about a long shift. He slowly looked around the store, his eyes scanning each section like he was memorizing where everything was. "It must get lonely. Just you out here in the dark, no one for miles," he added. His tone wasn't threatening. That somehow made it worse. It was casual, curious, like he was commenting on the weather. I stepped back a little and asked if he needed anything else. He tilted his head and said, "You always keep the back room door locked. Smart. I've noticed you check it around 2 a.m. almost every night." My stomach tightened. I didn't say anything. "I'll let you get back to it," he said softly. "Didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." Then he walked out again, disappearing into the dark lot like he had never been there at all. After that night, the job wasn't the same. I walked to my car with my keys between my fingers. I kept a tire iron under the counter. I changed the curtains in my apartment and started locking the bathroom door even when I was alone. Some nights he didn't show up. Sometimes a whole week passed without me seeing him. That didn't help. It made everything worse because I never knew when he'd show again. Then one night, I came back from my 10-minute break to find a Polaroid on the counter. It was a photo of me from earlier that night refilling the windshield washer bin behind the station. It was taken close, way too close. There was no note, but the dot I had made over the I on the word windshield written on the bin label had been circled in red ink. The next time he came in, I told him to leave. My voice shook, which I hated, but I said I'd call the police if he didn't go. Paul nodded slightly. "I get it. I've been too forward." "You've been following me," I said. He replied, "I just think you're the kind of person who's used to being misunderstood. I thought maybe you'd appreciate someone who notices things." "That's not noticing," I told him. "That's obsession." He didn't even flinch. His expression didn't change at all. "Would it feel more normal if I smiled every night and bought a soda?" he asked quietly. "Would it help if I talked about sports and pretended I didn't notice your shoes are always a half size too big? Or how your left eyelid twitches when you're tired?" Hearing him list things I didn't even know about myself made my skin crawl. By then, I was already dialing 911. He didn't try to stop me. He just stood there with his hands at his sides, watching calmly. When the police arrived, he didn't resist. They searched his car and found a notebook filled with dates, times, and notes about me. My shifts. My routine. What groceries I bought. The routes I walked during my breaks. One page had my name written repeatedly in tighter loops until it turned into a dark scribbled patch. He kept telling the officers the same line, "I just noticed things. I'm just curious." The restraining order went through later that week. I quit nights soon after. The company transferred me to a different station 2 hours away. I don't live in the same town anymore, and I don't drive the same route home. But even now, whenever headlights follow me too long, the back of my neck tingles. Sometimes I hear the gas station door chime in my head, like muscle memory. And sometimes I still think about the way he said my name that first night, like he practiced it beforehand, like he was trying to hear how it sounded in his mouth. Even after moving, I couldn't fully shake the feeling that I was still being watched. It didn't matter that the police handled it. It didn't matter that he didn't fight the restraining order. He had crossed a line I couldn't put back. Because once someone shows you how closely they can study you, how easily they can slip into your routine without you noticing, you never really feel alone in the same way again. That I worked the overnight shift at a 24-hour gas station. I'm 22, female, and I've only been there for a little under 2 months. I usually take the weekend shifts, Thursday through Saturday, while my coworker Max handles Sunday through Wednesday. That night started like any other. Around 2:30 a.m., Max and his friend Ben stopped by for coffee and to say hi. They had taken magic mushrooms a couple hours before, so when they walked in, they were giggling and barely holding it together. Honestly, it was entertainment for me since my shift had been slow. As we talked, Ben mentioned something that didn't register with me at first. A car had been sitting in the parking lot with its lights off but engine running, and someone was sitting inside. He said he'd talked to the man, who claimed he was waiting for a DoorDash order. That wasn't unusual, except I hadn't had an order in nearly 2 hours. I'd spent most of the night cleaning in the back of the store, far away from the windows and the pumps, so I hadn't seen anything outside. We shrugged it off because nothing seemed immediately wrong. Max and Ben went outside to smoke a cigar and play with Max's dog. I didn't think twice about the car until I was alone again. Something about the timing felt odd. I didn't know how long the car had been out there before my coworker arrived. An hour later, the guys came back in for more coffee, and Max told me more about what they saw. He said the car was parked in a spot that wasn't visible from the register, right behind the wall. During the whole hour they were outside, the man kept switching between staring at them and looking down at his phone like he was texting someone. Ben, in his very high state, walked right up to the car and asked why the guy was watching them. At first the man pretended he didn't speak English. Then he switched to English and claimed he must have had the wrong address before driving out of the lot quickly. Max added something else. The car looked brand new. No license plates. There was a pile of blankets in the back, big enough to hide someone. And right after that car left, another brand new car with no plates pulled into the lot, lights off, and left immediately after following the first car. Max and Ben hung around another 15 minutes before they finally headed out. Before leaving, Max told me to be careful and keep an eye out. Once they were gone and the store was quiet again, everything they said started replaying in my mind. A brand new car. No plates. Someone sitting inside for who knows how long. Blankets in the back seat. Then another new, plateless car pulling in right after. It didn't feel like coincidence anymore. Around 6 a.m., Max came back, sober this time, and we talked more while he refilled his coffee. He told me the whole situation had bothered him even more once the high wore off. The man in the car had been acting strange the entire time they were outside, constantly checking his phone, looking toward the lot entrance, then toward the store doors, then back toward them. Max admitted he was genuinely freaked out. He said he kept thinking about how vulnerable the place is late at night, especially if I'm alone. We both realized how quickly things could have gone wrong if those two cars were connected and waiting for the right moment. I may carry a knife for protection, but hearing Max describe what he saw made it clear that if multiple people were involved, it wouldn't have helped much. The idea that they could have been planning something while I worked alone made my gut twist. I didn't know if it was coincidence or something worse, but I kept thinking about how neither Max nor Ben would have been there normally. They weren't even supposed to stop by. They'd just been messing around, and their timing might have been the only thing that kept something from happening. I found myself grateful in a way that felt strange. If they hadn't been outside acting like two overgrown kids playing with a dog, things might have gone in a completely different direction. I worked the rest of my shift watching the parking lot much more carefully than before. But the story didn't end there. Not even close. That I really hoped that would be the end of it, but the next night proved otherwise. It was around 3 a.m., and I was mopping the floors when 4 guys came in for snacks and coffee. As I rang them up, one of them casually asked if I knew anything about a car parked at the far end of the lot. He said it was running with the lights off and 2 people inside who looked like they were arguing. The moment he described the car, something inside me dropped. I asked him what he meant, trying to sound calm. He said it looked like a brand new Subaru with no license plates. That was all I needed to hear. I told them a similar car had been in the lot the night before, same kind of behavior, same lack of plates. They exchanged looks immediately. The one who seemed like the leader told me they had noticed the car as soon as they pulled up to the pump farthest from the doors. It was already there, sitting in the dark with the engine running. As they filled their truck, the guys in the Subaru kept glancing toward the entrance of the store, then back at their phones. When the group walked past the car toward the doors, they heard one of the men inside talking loudly, pointing toward the store entrance like he was giving directions or arguing about something. One of the customers had started to approach the car to ask if everything was okay. As soon as he got close enough for the men inside to notice, the Subaru reversed hard and drove away. Moments later, another car that had pulled in with its lights off left right behind it, following closely, just like the night before. I told the group everything Max and Ben had described. They looked uncomfortable, almost alarmed, and offered to stay inside with me for a while to make sure the cars didn't come back. I asked if they were sure, and they told me it was no trouble. They hung around for about 20 minutes, joking with each other while keeping an eye on the parking lot. Eventually, when nothing else happened, we all agreed I was probably safe for the moment. I thanked them and let them top off their coffee before they left. For the rest of my shift, I kept checking the pumps, the back corners, and the spots the cameras couldn't see. Every small noise made me tense. The whole situation felt wrong in a way I couldn't shake. 2 nights in a row. 2 different groups confirming the same behavior. And still, I hadn't seen the car myself even once. Nothing else happened for the rest of that shift, but the fear didn't leave. What bothered me most was that everyone else saw the car except me. I kept wishing it was all paranoia, but 2 nights in a row at almost the same time, in the same hidden spot of the lot, with the same pattern, it didn't feel like coincidence anymore. It felt deliberate. A few days later, I went back to work for another overnight. I tried to convince myself nothing would happen. But when the store gets quiet around 2 or 3 a.m., silence turns into a reminder of everything that could go wrong. Every time the automatic doors creaked, my pulse jumped. Every time headlights flashed by on the road, I checked to make sure they didn't pull into the lot. Around 3 a.m., I found myself checking the blind spots again. The pump area. The far corner behind the ice machine. The stretch of pavement the cameras don't cover. The whole time, my mind kept replaying what Max had said about the blankets in the back seat, and how the cars showed up only when I was most alone. I kept imagining someone slipping inside the store the moment I stepped into the walk-in cooler or walked out to change a trash bag. It didn't help that the spot the car had used both nights was positioned perfectly so I wouldn't see it unless I physically walked outside. Someone had chosen that location on purpose. Someone who didn't want to be seen by the cashier. The worst part was the growing realization that those men hadn't been watching the customers. They had been watching me. Waiting for me to be alone. Waiting for the wrong moment. For the rest of the shift, I stayed inside unless another customer was present. Even then, I moved quickly, always checking over my shoulder. When dawn finally came and I stepped out to change the pump trash, I looked around carefully, one last time. No cars. No headlights. No one lurking in the dark. But the unease didn't fade. What scares me most is the possibility that these weren't random people. The same type of car, no plates, running with the lights off, 2 nights in a row. It felt organized. Planned. And the only constant in that pattern was me being alone at 3 a.m. Thankfully, I didn't work for the next few days. And all I could do was hope that when I came back, that car wouldn't return. My name is Daniel. I'm 29, and I work the overnight shift at a small rural motel. It's not part of a chain, just a little family-run place with 2 floors and around 25 rooms. My usual hours are 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The motel barely gets any traffic after midnight, maybe a traveler or 2 passing through, but most nights are dead quiet. That's why I took the job. I'm not much of a people person, and sitting alone in an empty building suited me just fine. The front office is simple, a desk, a few chairs, a coffee machine, and a rack of brochures. Behind the desk, a short hallway leads to the back office, which feels more like a lounge. There's another desk, a couch, a mini fridge, and a TV mounted on the wall. A little speaker back there dings whenever someone hits the bell at the front desk, so most nights I just relax in the back, watch something on my laptop, or nap lightly on the couch. When the bell rings, I get up and walk to the front. I'd worked there long enough to recognize the normal sounds. The building creaks occasionally. The heater clicks when it kicks on. After hours, when guests use their keycards, the front door buzzes loudly. All of that is familiar. But the thing about working overnight is that you start noticing every sound, and sometimes things that seem normal at first stop feeling normal. This happened on a cold Tuesday night in the fall. The parking lot had only a handful of cars belonging to guests. Around 2 a.m., I heard the bell. I got up from the couch, walked into the main office, and stopped. There was no one there. The lobby was empty. I looked out through the glass doors, expecting to see someone walking in, but the road was pitch dark and empty. No headlights, no movement. I told myself maybe I misheard it, but the bell is loud and distinct. I know that sound. I waited a minute, and when nobody came, I went back to the lounge. 10 minutes later, the bell rang again. I jumped up and rushed to the front. Again, the lobby was empty. Not a single person. This time, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I stepped outside and looked both ways. The parking lot was still. No cars pulling in. No people. Nothing but cold air and silence. That I went back inside, trying to convince myself it had to be some kind of glitch or maybe a kid wandering around. Instead of returning to the back office, I stayed at the front desk this time, just in case someone was playing around. I sat there for about 15 minutes. Nothing. The lobby stayed completely still. Eventually, I told myself I was overreacting and went back to the lounge. I sat on the couch, pulled out my phone, and tried to relax. Not even 10 minutes passed before the bell rang again. My stomach tightened. I ran to the front, and once again, the lobby was empty. No footsteps. No opening door. Nothing. I checked the bathrooms, peeked behind the desk, even looked under the counter just in case some teenager was trying to prank me. Nothing. I stepped outside again, shining my phone's flashlight around the parking lot, but there wasn't a single sign of anyone. The road was just as dead as before. That's when I decided I wasn't going anywhere else. I dragged the chair to the spot right behind the front desk and sat down facing the bell. I turned off a couple of lobby lights so the room was dim, thinking that maybe I'd catch whoever was doing it. It was so quiet that the clock on the wall sounded too loud. The hum of the fridge in the back clicked on and off. I just stared at the little silver bell, waiting for it to move. 15 minutes passed. 20. My eyelids felt heavy. I started to think maybe it was just some weird electrical thing, something triggering the bell by accident. My mind drifted a little, and I let my shoulders relax. Then the bell rang. Only this time, I saw exactly what did it. A pale hand rose from under the front desk, reached over the counter, and pressed the bell right in front of me. I shot up so fast the chair nearly fell backward. I stumbled into the hallway and rushed into the back office. I slammed the door, locked it, and stood there in the dark, shaking so hard my teeth ached. My brain raced through 1,000 questions. How had someone gotten under the desk without me seeing them? How long had they been hiding there? I forced myself to look at the security monitor on the wall, terrified of what I'd see. That I stared at the lobby camera feed first. The chair I'd knocked over lay on its side near the desk. At first glance, the room looked empty. Then, in the bottom corner of the screen, something moved. Slowly, a head rose into view from behind the front desk. I couldn't make out his features clearly, just the shape of his head and the glint of eyes staring directly into the camera. Watching me. As if he knew exactly where I had run. I backed away from the monitor, but I couldn't stop watching. My heartbeat felt like it was shaking my whole chest. With shaking hands, I dialed 911 and whispered that someone had broken in and was hiding inside the motel. The dispatcher told me to stay where I was and not to open the door for anyone. While I was still on the phone, I forced myself to look at the screen again. The head was gone. A second later, I saw him crawl out from behind the desk on his hands and knees, almost animal-like. He stood up slowly. He was tall, wearing a hoodie pulled tight around his face, and his posture was hunched in a way that made my skin crawl. Then he started walking around the lobby casually, like he belonged there, like this was just part of his routine. Then he turned and walked out of the camera frame toward the hallway. The hallway that led directly to the back office. I pressed my back against the door, trying not to breathe too loudly. A moment later, the doorknob rattled. Not violently, just a slow deliberate turn, as if he was checking to see if I'd locked it. I stopped breathing entirely. The dispatcher kept asking if I was safe, but I couldn't make a sound. My throat felt tight, my hands numb. After a few seconds, the rattling stopped. Then I heard slow footsteps walking away. I hurried back to the monitor. The man was pacing around the lobby again. Sometimes he wandered toward the doors, staring outside like he was waiting for someone. Other times, he stood in the middle of the room, looking at the front desk, tilting his head like he was listening for something. Minutes dragged by like hours, then, finally, something shifted on the parking lot cameras. Flashing blue and red lights. Two police cars pulled into the lot, lights cutting across the pavement. The man must have seen them too because he suddenly bolted out of the lobby camera's view. A second later, I heard the front doors push open. I stayed frozen where I was until the dispatcher told me the officers were inside. Only then did I unlock the back office door and step out, legs shaking so badly it felt like my knees might give out. The officers swept the building with their flashlights, checking every hallway, every corner, every empty room. They didn't find him. Instead, they found something else, a large rock propped against the front door. He'd used it to keep the door from locking behind him. He must have slipped out the moment the patrol cars pulled up. One of the officers stayed with me while the others searched outside. The lot was empty. No footprints, no sign of a car leaving, nothing. Whoever the man was, he'd vanished into the dark without a trace. The officer said he probably ran as soon as he saw the lights, using the rock so he wouldn't get trapped. They told me they'd stay until the sun came up just to be safe. The whole time they were there, I kept replaying what I'd seen in my head, the pale hand rising over the counter, the head peeking into the camera, the slow crawl across the floor. It didn't feel real. It felt like something from a nightmare, except I knew I hadn't imagined any of it. I had watched him move through the lobby like he'd done it before. By the time daylight finally came, I felt like every muscle in my body had locked up. The officers walked me through the lobby once more to show me everything was clear. The chair I'd knocked over. The bell still sitting exactly where it had been pressed. The empty space under the desk where someone had been hiding for who knows how long. After they left, I just stood there, staring at the counter. That little silver bell used to be nothing, just part of the job. Now, every time I hear it ring, even faintly, even in my memory, I think of that hand, creeping up from the shadows, pressing it with quiet confidence. Like he wanted me to know he was there. I still work nights, but I never sit in the back office anymore. I stay at the front desk with all the lights on. And I never, ever ignore the bell.